Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our webinar all about what everyone needs to know about life planning. My name is Isabelle.clausen, a financial advisor at Desert Wealth Management here in Fountain Hills, Arizona, as well as in Idaho Falls, Idaho. And I'm partnered along here with Miss Elisabeth Pickle, who's an estate planner. And today we're going to be chatting a little bit more about life planning, what you need to know and how to integrate it into your daily life.
Yes, thanks, Isabelle. I'm Elisabeth Pickle. I am an estate planning attorney, the CEO and owner of Mindful Counsel, located in Scottsdale, Arizona. We are a boutique estate planning, business succession planning, and intellectual property firm. And our goal is to help our clients protect and preserve their assets and to create a legacy and generational wealth through estate planning, proper business planning, and with the protection of any intellectual property as well. So super excited to be here and to present this seminar with you, Isabelle.
Yes, we're both very excited. When Elisabeth and I connected for the first time, we both connected on the fact that we very much care about life planning for our clients. Estate planning isn't just trusts and wills. Financial planning isn't just investments and, tax education. It's a lot about understanding your client's goals and then giving them action steps to get there. So that's why we're so passionate about this topic. Me and my father, Rob Clausen, care very much about life planning for people, and we're really excited to start this webinar today for you all. So to dive in, we want to just chat really quick about our three main points of this webinar. So first is defining life planning from both the estate planning and financial planning perspective. Second, why does everyone need it? And third, what are the next steps in your financial journey, what paths to take, and when to know when you're ready to work with a professional. And so to define what life planning is, we believe that life planning involves the three main steps. First, defining your life goals. Second, developing a plan to work towards these goals. And then third, setting up a plan to protect these goals. So define, develop, and protect.
And now we can discuss life planning from the estate planning perspective. And so with respect to estate planning, what I'd like to do is to introduce you to the main concepts around estate planning, to educate you on the different types of tools and planning resources that we have, and to use illustrations so that you better understand what kind of estate planning might be important for you to consider, help you identify any of the goals that you have around protecting your estate or creating a legacy. And then, of course, at the end of this webinar, we would be pleased to offer you a complimentary consultation to take a deeper dive into your own personal situation, because estate planning, as you can understand, is very personal and fact-specific. So this is a good slide to open with, because I think a lot of people feel as though estate planning is really for people who are wealthy, as in they got a lot of money in the bank. So they're rich, they're famous. And I want to say to you that it does not matter. Even if you are rich and famous, for example, here I use Aretha Franklin. She had no will or estate plan. And so her estate took years to settle, ended up in probate court. And of course, that's usually the most expensive way to settle an estate. So no matter that Aretha is or was famous, is famous, and she probably had a wonderful crew of collaborative professionals on her side, the planning still just didn't get done. And then in the case of Michael Jackson, he actually did have a trust, but it wasn't created properly. And so there were a lot of issues with the trust not having any assets inside of it. And then, of course, disputes with the IRS over the value of the assets. So long story short, everybody can benefit from estate planning, no matter how much money you have in the bank, because in the end, it's not about the money. It's about the planning and what you want to happen to the assets that you do have.
Mm-hmm.
So some more positive examples of exceptional type of planning, we can look at Robin Williams and Joan Rivers, and you can Google these and see that Robin Williams, he had a $50 million estate, and he was very well planned, if you will. He had at least two trusts, and so his estate was settled within the family by his trustees, and it did not see a court of law. And with the fun fact with Joan Rivers is that we all remember Joan Rivers. She was a very eccentric woman, a comedian, very talented woman, but she had $150 million estate, and she left a large portion of that estate to her pets. Many people don't believe that you can leave money to your pets, but you can. And especially here in Arizona, there is state-specific law that allows you to leave what we call a pet trust. And it doesn't have to be a significant amount of money like Joan Rivers, but it can be enough to make sure that your pets are taken care of. In the event something happens to you, you can leave just enough money so that a caregiver who you nominate would be able to financially care for your pets.
Who knew that was even something you could put in your estate plan?
Well, for many years, it wasn't a thing. And then so many people wanted to leave a designated amount of money, for the care for their pets. And so over the years, the various states and jurisdictions have allowed it. Here's a picture of my beautiful Bernese Mountain Dogs who have passed on beyond the rainbow at this point. May they rest in peace forever. They were the best. But what we did is we left aside a very reasonable stipend for our nominated caretaker, because these boys are expensive. They eat a lot, right? Number one, and they require constant grooming, bathing, vet visits. And so we wanted to make sure that our caretaker would be able to have them in their custody and take care of them and love them, and that they weren't going to be a burden. So that's the point of leaving behind a little bit of money for a pet trust. So the principles of estate planning, we're gonna talk a little bit about the fundamentals, the challenges, basic distribution techniques, and then I want to do a little bit of a deeper dive into trust strategies, because I know that so many people have questions about trusts. What is a trust? How is it different from a will? Is a trust right for me? So we'll talk about these. So first of all, a real fundamental question here is, what is an estate? An estate is all of the wealth that you have accumulated during your lifetime. And what is an estate plan? Your estate plan should have really two goals. That's it. The management of your assets during your lifetime. And number two, distribution of your assets upon your death. The benefits of estate planning, I guess I want to say they should be obvious. They are obvious to me, right? Because I've been doing this for what seems like forever. But the benefits of estate planning are, number one, you get to select who will receive your assets. Here's the truth. Arizona has an estate plan already built out for you, but you might not like it. So it's very important that you select who will receive your assets. You determine how the assets should be distributed. And then you certainly want to be in charge of choosing the people who are going to manage that estate for you. Not to mention choosing guardians for minor children, and then making sure that there is liquid capital for your care, your burial, any settlement costs for the estate, or any income tax costs. And this is a question that I get a lot of pushback sometimes. Well, Liz, I'm not wealthy. Well, who is wealthy, right? If we're talking in terms of cold hard cash, right now, the actual federal gift tax and estate tax laws for 2022 say that if you have 12.6 million, you are wealthy, because that is when the federal government is going to institute an estate tax. And so if you're thinking, well, what does my estate look like in terms of taxes? Am I considered to have a great amount of wealth? You're not going to be taxed on any of your estate until you hit that 12.6 million threshold. So the various tools that we think about when we think about estate planning are the estate planning documents, such as the last will and testament, a trust, whether it be revocable or irrevocable, a financial power of attorney, and a healthcare power of attorney, where you are able to name an agent who will advocate for you and speak on your behalf if you are unable to do so due to a disability or incapacitation, and then a HIPAA authorization, and then your living will, which is also called the Advanced Healthcare Directive.
Alrighty, so now we're going to be chatting a little bit about the definition of life planning from the financial planning perspective. Thank you so much for your definitions, Liz. I always am fascinated by all the different parts of estate planning. But when we're talking about life planning, I think it's really a simple financial process. And this is one type of system I like to share with all my clients, regardless of their age or what life stage they're in, because setting up a simple system can make the rest of the details a lot easier. So one of the first steps in defining this process is, of course, defining your income. And the second step is paying your bills, your fixed expenses, all the boring stuff. And then the third, and I think most important part of the financial life planning process, is putting money towards your goals, paying yourself first, doing that before you then spend money on the fun items. Why is this? Well, it's because a lot of us want instant gratification, and we all want what we want right now. And so in order for us to have discipline and meet our financial goals, but also have fun in life, you could do so by setting up this very simple system. And it's a bucket strategy that I'll be sharing with all of you throughout the remainder of this webinar. But first, I want to dive into how health and wealth are similar. Now, one thing I've noticed is one of the ways you could define many complex aspects of finance is by comparing it to something that a lot of people are familiar with. And who doesn't want to get more healthy, more fit, or feel more present in life? I find that health and wealth are very similar. Health and wealth can shape the way you think. Health and wealth both require discipline. We all know that. They also require big picture perspectives, not just living in the moment or having instant gratification, but looking at your life as a whole. Health and wealth cannot also be overly restrictive. It has to be sustainable. And on that note, one way you could have health and wealth be sustainable is by having it be systemized. Managing health and wealth effectively can help you meet your goals, and managing these different aspects effectively can help you spend more energy doing what you love, which is, I think, everyone's goal in life, is to do what you love with the people that you love. And so there's a couple key ways that I think wealth and health are similar, and this will really help us apply finance to life planning a little bit better. So instant versus delayed gratification. One of the links I think this has to finance is the idea of compound interest. I think everyone here can agree that compound interest is amazing and a very big gift to the world. It's essentially when you set aside money every month or throughout certain periods, whether it's annually or biweekly, but setting aside money regularly into an investment account, and the money could compound on itself, the different rates of return growing over time. And one way that this idea of compound interest can link to health is when you choose to eat healthy and exercise regularly, the positive impacts can compound over time, and you could feel healthier, have more energy, and feel better. And so the main idea on this point of this similarity between wealth and health is that short-term sacrifices are worth these long-term results. And it's the small habits every day that really add up. But one aspect I want to share with talking about having a sustainable wealth and health lifestyle is enjoying the 80-20 rule. Now, this is a rule that I love chatting about. The 80-20 rule, in a nutshell, is pretty much saying 80% of the time, eat healthy, exercise well, but 20% of the time, have fun. This is a fun, sustainable lifestyle. And the same principle could be applied with budgeting. A lot of the time, have fun with your money, enjoy it, but also be strong in your budgeting types of lessons and different systems you have. Of course, the 80-20 percentage is a little different with finance, but most of the time, be systemized and budget, and then the rest of the time have a little bit of fun and spend money on what you want. And when you have a system, you could actually do this. So this is the balancing act, the restrictive versus the excessive mentality. I think we all want the middle option here, having a balanced, financially stable, joyful, and healthy life, not being too restrictive or too excessive, because either side can be harmful and they're definitely not sustainable. And one of the final ways that I think wealth and health are so similar is in both of these aspects, you need to start with where you're at now and then make modifications as you progress. And so that just goes back to this finance example. If you have a certain goal in mind, take a step back and look at your income, look at your outflows of what you have to pay for bills, and try to figure out how much you have left over every month and designate a certain amount of that to put money towards your goals. And then from there, you can enjoy life in the present moment and spend money on what you want. And so with all that being said, we're going to be now diving into why does everyone need life planning from the estate planning perspective.
I have to say that the analogy with health and wealth is just uncanny to me. And when Isabelle first introduced this concept, it's changed everything about how I think about my own health and my own wealth. So I just really get a kick out of it every time I hear her talk about it. So it's
so glad.
It's just fabulous. So back to the principles of estate planning. So we've talked about the fundamentals, and if I recall what's on the next slide correctly, I believe we're going to discuss the challenges. Yes, very good. Okay, so estate planning challenges. We have 4 that I'd like to point out. Attorneys, probate, taxes, and long-term care. We'll talk about those on the next slide. Okay, so with respect to attorneys, I understand that many people are worried that they won't choose the best attorney for estate planning. They will not get a fair price, so they tend to shop around, or the attorney will take control of their assets. So number one, with respect to finding a qualified attorney, you certainly want to work with an attorney who specializes in estate planning, right? You would not go to a general practitioner in medicine for a heart problem. You want to make sure that the attorney you work with is a specialist when it comes to estate planning, that they are familiar with all aspects of not only creating your estate plan, but once you pass away, are they also familiar with how to administer an estate plan? Okay. Some of the best experience that I have personally acquired over the years is going through the trust and estate administration process, seeing all of the nightmares that pop up, and then going back and drafting the plan in such a way that all of that will be avoided. So a good attorney kind of learns backwards, if you will. So make sure your attorney is qualified with the administration and that they're willing to work with other professionals like Isabel, like a financial advisor, like your CPA. It's very important that you have a team on your side, and there should be a collaborative effort assisting you with your estate plan. If you don't know how to contact an estate attorney, you can always ask for referrals from friends or your financial professionals, and you can also contact the local state bar association. Probate. I get a lot of questions about what is probate, and probate, it sounds really scary, but probate is a court proceeding that concludes all the legal and financial matters of the deceased. And so the facts about probate, number one, probate can be expensive, but it just depends on the state. And in Arizona, it's not terribly expensive, but it can be. It just all depends on if there was a will, if there was not a will, how many heirs are there? Is there going to be a contest? And then, of course, attorney's fees can certainly add to the cost of administering a probate. They are typically hourly fees, so that can get a little bit pricey. And then probates can take a long time. Again, it's very fact specific. It all depends on your particular situation. It can take at least 4 months, up to a year or more. And probate doesn't offer any privacy. It is a public process. What I often say is probate is where you actually nominate a personal representative to file a lawsuit against your own estate. And that's really what's happening. And so it is a matter of public interest, public record, and the court oversees the entire process. One thing I want to say about probating a will, or actually maybe you pass away and you don't have a will, either way, the probate process will be initiated. Your beneficiary forms must correspond with the directives in your will or your trust. The assets will go to the beneficiaries on the beneficiary form rather than the individuals who are named in your last will and testament. So in other words, the beneficiary designations will override your last will and testament. So make sure that your beneficiary forms match up with your will or trust. Estate taxes are another problem or concern for people. They are levied against the estate if you reach a certain threshold with respect to the value of the assets in the estate. As I mentioned, in this year, 2022, you have the ability to pass away with 12.6 million. If you're married, you can double that, and you will avoid any type of an estate tax. That number is due to sunset in, let's see, I'm looking at my notes here, in 2025, I believe. Yeah. So it's going to drop to 6.2 million in 2025 if the laws do not change. So the estate tax exemption always changes. And so that's why it is so important to work with a qualified estate attorney, so that if your estate is starting to reach a point where it might be considered taxable, we want to do some additional planning. Yes, and so here is the annual life gift tax exclusion. Currently, it is $16,000 per person, which means you can give away $16,000 per individual for the year annually, up to a lifetime exemption of 12.6 million. Again, double that to 32,000 if you are married. And again, one of the many benefits of being married is the unlimited marital deduction Transfers of wealth between spouses are always exempt from federal estate and gift taxes. Other items that are most often exempt from gift taxes are any educational gifts or medical expenses, providing that they are paid directly to the institution or the provider and not the recipient. So here's the fun stuff, I think, if you will, the basic distribution techniques. Here are the ways that we can transfer our wealth or our assets to our loved ones and our beneficiaries. We can do so through intestacy, which means you have no plan, right? This is the plan that I was referring to that Arizona has for you, the laws of intestacy. You can have a will. You can transfer assets via jointly held property, and you can also use contracts. The problems with intestacy. Well, your distribution is determined by state law. Now, if you're married, most likely all of your estate will go to your surviving spouse. If you're single, it changes, depends on if you have children. It depends on if your parents are alive. Maybe your siblings. The point is, it's probably the last type of planning that you would want to rely on. There are fees and taxes involved with passing your estate under the laws of intestacy. It obviously sends your estate directly into probate. And if you have minor children, a guardianship for those children are going to be determined by the probate court. So, what's better than intestacy? A will, because the will is going to allow you to control the distribution of your estate, to absolutely name a guardian for any minor children, and to potentially reduce any fees and taxes. You have a right to decide what happens to your assets, and the will allows you to say those things and to make a plan. Something very important to consider when you're choosing an executor. The executor, also called the personal representative, is the person or the people, you can name more than one, who's going to oversee your wishes, make sure your wishes are carried out. So you want to make sure that they have time to administer your estate, make sure they're capable of doing so. You may choose, obviously, a spouse. That's typically when you're married, your surviving spouse is going to be the executor of the estate. It could be a friend, it could be a lawyer or a professional. But you want to make sure that by naming a successor executor, that all of your affairs are going to be taken care of. Pardon me, the successor executor is a backup to the original executor. So make sure that when you name a personal representative for your estate, that you also name a backup. So jointly held property, where we see jointly held property is with deeds and real estate. So for married couples, most of you out there are going to have your residences, at least your homes, owned in joint tenancy with rights of survivorship. So if one of you passes away, actually nothing needs to be done. There's no probate, there's no will to probate. Your property, as long as it's held jointly, will pass directly to the other person named on the deed. So that's a good way to pass assets among spouses. The dangers of joint tenancy, aside from naming your spouse as your joint tenant, could be naming other joint tenants, such as children. You could actually trigger a gift tax consequence. If you name an adult child as a joint tenant on your real estate deed, if your child has financial problems, well, they now own part of your house. And so you're opening yourself up to the potential creditors of that adult child. So at least before you decide to add another person to the deed, have an attorney review that. It's worth the time and money. Oh, and I jumped ahead a little bit, but here's this is so important to understand why it's not always a good idea to add your kid to the deed. But I'm not saying you can't do it. We do it a lot, in fact. But the point is you need to have options presented to you and understand the potential consequences of adding another individual to your property, and whether or not you're going to expose yourself to the debts and liabilities of your new co-owner. And of course, here in Arizona, we are in a community property state. So I always say, be very careful who you marry in Arizona, because you will automatically acquire not only their assets, but you'll also acquire their bad deeds. So you are responsible for the bad acts of your spouse, but you're also going to acquire all of the assets that your spouse acquires during the marriage. If you want to avoid that, then there are things you can do, such as creating a prenuptial agreement before you get married, or making sure that your estate stays very separate and apart from your spouse. And a property agreement is essentially like a contract. It's a declaration of property ownership clearly stated between spouses. And this can include a prenuptial agreement. Contracts also include your life insurance policies, pensions, annuities, and retirement plans. You can pass your retirement plan to your spouse, to your children, merely by naming them as a beneficiary on the retirement plan. And the retirement plan will then roll over to your beneficiary. And remember, the contracts are going to bypass any directives that you set forth in your will. So again, if you want to leave your life insurance policy to your brother, but the contract, the life insurance policy itself, has your sister named as the beneficiary, it's going to go to your sister. So be very, very aware and mindful of how your will and your contracts line up. The importance of beneficiary designation. Again, as I just mentioned, some really bad things can happen, and they do happen when there's either no designated beneficiary. That's going to send your estate into probate. And then, the IRA is the other big issue that we see. For example, I had a lovely woman come to my office, and she was widowed. Her husband passed away. And she came to me and she said, Liz, my husband had a life insurance policy, but he was married before, and he never changed the beneficiary on that life insurance policy. And it names his ex-wife. What do I do? So that was a really tough situation. It was a contract that named another person aside from the deceased's wife as the beneficiary. And sometimes there's not a lot we can do about that.
Well, to end on a happier note, we're going to be transitioning to why everyone needs life planning from the financial planning perspective. And I would say one of the biggest reasons that we need life planning is, like I've said several times so far in this webinar, is we all love instant gratification, and discipline is necessary for us to live that sustainable life. A lot of people think that a budget or a system is restrictive and keeps you from having what you want. But I actually think that having a budgeting system is one of the most freeing things you could do for yourself, because you're telling your money where to go. It's not controlling you, you're in control. And a lot of people, though, do not like budgeting. There was a budgeting survey from credit.com, and they asked people, what's the biggest reason you don't create a budget? 27% said they didn't think they needed one. 24% said they never stick to one. 20% say they don't feel like making one. 11% don't like to feel restricted. 11% don't know how. And 7% are afraid to check your bank account. I know almost all of these has applied to me in one area, at least, one area of my life. And I think a lot of people here can also agree that budgeting is hard and it can be confusing. But there's two different methods that I take with budgeting. First, I don't like to call it a budget. I like to call it a system because that's a much better word than a budget. And the second is keeping it simple is one of the best ways you could actually have a sustainable system. And so to kind of share how this would play out in real life, I'm going to be sharing a fictitious client couple, Heather and Hank Caring. This is a fictional couple that I'll take throughout the rest of my sections in this webinar to show the benefits of having a simple system to aid you in your life plan. And so one thing that I like to do with clients, whether they're pre-retirees, about to retire, or whether they're young professionals in their 30s, I like to create a retirement calculator where I put in basic inputs and it gives the clients direction and a guideline of how much to save every month to work toward their goal. And so the basic info for Heather and Hank is they're both 52 years old. They're both nurses and each make $80,000 a year. And they each contribute 3% to their employer-sponsored 403(b) accounts at the hospital they work at. And their hospital also matches that 3%. Their current balance in their 403(b)s at their age of 52 is $55,000 each. So they've been good savers. They worked hard. And also, they have some goals they want to work towards. They worked so hard to retire down the road. What do they want their retirement to look like? Well, they've decided that they want to retire at 65, and their goal of how much they want to spend in retirement is $6,000 a month. And so what we did is we plugged in all these numbers, as well as an estimated annual rate of return of 7% and an inflation rate of 3%. And we plugged all these items into this calculator to help give a projection of how much Heather and Hank should be saving from now until they retire to be able to spend what they want in retirement. So what this calculator showed, which we'll share in a little bit, we actually are going to be looking at their budget first to kind of figure out what they have to work with before we show all of the fun numbers from the calculator. So looking at their approximate monthly income after taking out how much they're putting in their employer-sponsored plan and how much they're paying in taxes, they have about $9,750 of monthly income. And of that, they spend about $5,320 on their mandatory bills. This is taken from the Bureau of Labor Statistics table, calculating the estimated expenses for a family of 4. And so after they pay their bills, they have about $4,430 left over in their budget. So they get to choose, do I get to save it? Do I get to spend it? Do I get to do both? And when we run that calculator to help them figure out how much they need to save now to spend what they want in retirement, they have to save approximately $3,000 a month every month until they retire to reach their goal. And so looking at this, now that we know what their goal is, we could fill in the rest of their bucket and show that out of the $4,430 they have left over in the month, they save $3,000 of it, and they could spend $1,430 on fun expenses like traveling and eating out and buying fun items, or maybe saving it. This is a very simple process that helps people have a life plan where it's sustainable, it's fun, but they're also working towards their goals. I have so many clients come to me and they say they're just worried about spending and it's hard for them to spend money, or they feel like they can't stop spending. But a lot of it's because they don't have knowledge of how much they actually need to save. And so that's why we love taking people through this in their life plan so they can have clear direction of how much to save and how much to spend. And so, like I said, it's a very simple process. For those of you watching online, just take a screenshot of this process. But defining the income, paying your bills, paying yourself first, and then having that fun, sustainable spending. And so on that note, we're going to have Liz finish up her portion of the webinar talking all about next steps in your life planning journey from the estate planning perspective.
Okay, so finally, we've reached everybody's favorite topic, trust strategies. They're my favorite topic. So let's dive into that. So we'll talk a little bit about the fundamentals of trusts, advanced strategies, and other considerations. what is a trust? Ah, my favorite question. A trust is a legal arrangement under which one person or institution controls property given by another person for the benefit of a third party. Did you catch that? Let's look at that with a visual. So the parties involved in a trust. I want you to think of the trust as a bucket. And so you are the grantor. You are the individual creating your trust, also known as the trustee, while you are alive. So the grantor takes their assets, whether the assets be a house, a bank account, a life insurance policy, annuities, investments of some sort, and you put your assets into this trust bucket. Now, you'll see the orange arrow pointing up to the trustee. While you are alive, you are the trustee, and your spouse, if you're married, you both are in control of your assets. They are merely sitting in this bucket, waiting until the time where you pass away or become incapacitated even. Then the trustee, another person who you have named to manage and administer all of your assets and distribute the assets. Here we see the arrow pointing through the real estate to the beneficiaries. So that's a little diagram of how the trust works. So we have various types of trusts. The most common types of trusts that we use are the revocable living trust. The testamentary trust is a trust that is set up later after you pass away. And those are usually included in wills. But as I said, the most common trust is the revocable living trust, also known as the family trust. And then we can also create irrevocable trusts that we use for long-term care and Medicaid planning. So the testamentary trust, as I mentioned, does help to control distributions, but it doesn't avoid probate, because the testamentary trust is something that your lawyer will help you to craft in your will. And what it says is basically is, after I die, set up the trust, make sure that all of my grandchildren get their disbursements in a trust for college education. But most people prefer to create a revocable living trust while they are still alive, because they know it's been done. They know exactly that how their assets have been retitled or placed into that trust bucket while they are alive. And it just makes more sense, because they don't have to worry about someone else setting up trusts later after they've passed away. And if that revocable trust is structured properly, it will avoid probate. So again, the revocable trust is going to allow your trustee to manage your property, avoid a conservatorship for you if you were to become incapacitated. Rather than have to go to probate court, file for a conservatorship, you can nominate the person who you would like to be your conservator and your trustee. And of course, it avoids probate. The irrevocable trusts do provide the benefits of a revocable trust. But what they do is they add a layer of asset protection from creditors. Now, in doing so, you do have to relinquish ownership of your assets. And so we often use irrevocable trusts to protect assets from creditors, or to prepare and plan for long-term care. If you are going to end up in a nursing home, or it's likely, then we'll use an irrevocable trust to protect some of your assets so that the Medicaid cannot come back later and grab those assets. But it's very confusing and it's very convoluted. And so be sure that you work with a very experienced elder law attorney. special needs trusts are another incredible tool that we use all the time to hold assets for an heir, a beneficiary who has special needs. For instance, if you have a child who is on the spectrum, and when you pass away, you want to make sure that your child receives an inheritance, but is able to maintain their public benefits. And so they have their public benefits, they continue to receive those, but now they have a special needs trust that holds their money in this pot that will allow a trustee to distribute the money for quality of life reasons. So it's a tremendous tool that we use all the time. The advanced trust strategies we use called AB, marital and bypass trusts. Those trusts sometimes are used for blended families. If you are married and you have children from a prior relationship, and you want to make sure that when you pass away, that your children from a prior relationship or marriage are protected and will receive an inheritance. If your surviving spouse remarries, well, what could happen? A lot of bad things could happen, right? So we have the ability to use advanced trust strategies to make sure your children from a prior relationship are protected. Irrevocable life insurance trusts, we don't use a lot of those right now because those are used to reduce your tax burden. But they are very good tools. And of course, charitable trust, we use those all the time to create charitable distributions to many nonprofit organizations. So I just mentioned, oh yes, I'm just way ahead of myself tonight. Can you imagine? Why consider the AB trust? Again, the AB trust is a way to shelter assets and protect them from creditors. And again, most often used to benefit your children from a previous marriage. So if you are in a blended family, make sure that you ask your estate planning attorney about using AB trusts. Again, the irrevocable life insurance trust. We place your life insurance policy in a trust, and the proceeds can be distributed free of estate taxes. Charitable remainder trust considerations. We set up many different types of charitable remainder trusts. You can set them up so they provide an income for a set term for your lifetime, with the remainder being distributed to the charity of your choice. You can set up charitable trusts to benefit your children for their lifetime, and then the remainder goes to a charity. And so there's no current capital gains taxes on highly appreciated assets. And the great benefit, as we all know with charity, is that it can significantly reduce or eliminate your estate taxes. So I want you all to be very mindful of the fact that an estate plan is an ever-evolving thing. It should be reviewed periodically. It's a living and breathing plan. Tax laws change. The composition of your holdings and the value of your assets may change. And, your family situation could change. Unfortunately, marriages don't always last. There could be a divorce. On the bright side, there could be more children being born. Children could be adopted. So just as your life is ever evolving and fluid and moving constantly and changing, your estate plan should change. And so please do review it periodically. Every 5 years is a good rule. So where do you go from here? Well, you could take your estate planning options and you could do it all yourself. Good luck. You could work with others, which I highly recommend. And you should interview other estate attorneys. This is a big deal. You could work with me. You could work with our firm. I'd certainly be honored, and it would be a privilege to have you. Or you could procrastinate. And I hear you. It's easy to procrastinate because we think that, for some reason we are invincible. We're going to live forever. But I'll tell you, folks, the greatest gift that you could ever give, not only yourself, but your loved ones, is to have a well-planned estate so that when it is time for you to go on to a better place, that your family and your friends are not thrown into a mess, where they can remember you fondly and they can sit with your memory, and you will be a blessing, and the estate will not be a curse.
What a wonderful reason to have a trust. I feel like that's a great reason to do that. Yes, so on my note to finish up this portion of the webinar, next steps in your life planning journey from the financial planning perspective, I would say that one of the first steps is, of course, to start at the beginning, define your goals. A lot of people that I talk to when I ask them to share their short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals, sometimes they have them all planned out, but sometimes they say, I have no clue even what the short-term goal is. So if you're someone who you're trying to really figure out some specific finance goals, go back and define your values in life. For example, a lot of people have the values of purpose, peace, family, love, health, friendship, achievement, creativity, etc. And then I would challenge you to ask yourself, what are your current priorities? And do your daily habits and your daily things that you do those line up with your values? And if so, why not? And usually if your values don't line up with your priorities, usually your money isn't either. And that's one of my biggest goals as a financial advisor, not just to help my clients have an organized financial plan, but to make sure that their finance goals really line up with their values so they could feel fulfilled in life. And so once you define your main values in life, it's important to then attach those to different finance goals. So for example, let's say one of your values is family. There's so many finance goals that could be attached to the value of family. Perhaps it's paying off debt so you could have a very stable home before you have children. Or maybe it's saving up for a down payment on a home so that your family can have a great place to grow up. Or maybe one of your family goals is to retire healthy so you could spend time with your grandchildren. So even from there, paying off debt, saving for a down payment on a home, retiring well, those could all be tied to the value of family. And so that's why it's important to attach each financial goal to a value, as that can really give you motivation to save and spend well. And so once you have decided your main financial goals, it's important to set a deadline and a price tag for each goal. So if we're looking back to Hank and Heather, they both knew they wanted to spend $6,000 a month and wanted to retire at 65. That was their timeline and their price tag on that goal. So once they added that to their retirement goal, they were able to build a plan from that, saving $3,000 into investments each month, and then spending $1,430 on those fun items. They could live in the moment, but also plan for the future to line up with the value of family time. And a lot of people say, this financial planning is great, this life planning is awesome, but what do I do right now when the market is kind of scary? Well, one of the biggest answers that me and my father and business partner, Rob, share with our clients is don't let volatility get you down. Letting volatility motivate your financial plan, instead of letting your goals motivate your financial plan, can pull you out of the markets when they're down. And that can mean that you lock in a loss. It means you may not have the opportunity to benefit from any rebound, because if you sell when the market is low, it's really hard to get back in because you're probably a little traumatized. And then it's hard to determine, because of that trauma, when to invest, because there could be some fear attached. So instead of letting the volatility in the market get you down, remind yourself of your financial goals and your values. That gives you something else to focus on. And for a lot of people that do let volatility dictate their plan, it could really affect their returns overall. The average return for the S&P 500 is 9.96%, almost 10% when we look at the history of the S&P. But the average equity for investors in that given time period is a little over 5%. So why is it that one of the most standard indexes makes almost 10% and the average equity investor makes 5%? It's because people let volatility dictate their plan and bought and sold at the wrong time. So that's important when you look at your entire financial life, not to just look at what the market's doing, but look at your life in total. Because when we look at all the things we can control in life, we cannot control the market. We cannot control natural disasters. We cannot control political climates. But what we can control is how much we save and how much we spend. And so that's why it's important to focus on that before you look at volatility. But when we're looking at the past and looking at history of the markets, it's good to look at other market recessions to see what happened and where we came from. So for example, if we look at the financial crisis from October of 07 to March of 09, the lowest point was 56.8%, the period return. But 12 months later, the market was up by 68.6%, just 12 months later. So 12 months before that, we were not doing well. But then 12 months after we got out of that downturn, we were doing pretty great. Same with looking at the COVID-19 sell-off. In February of 2020, the market was down 33.7, or excuse me, from February 2020 to March 2020, the market return was negative 33.7. But a year after that, the market was up 77.6. So what this slide shows is in the moment, volatility could feel really, really bad. But if we stay in the long haul and stick to our financial plan and listen to our financial advisor, we could hopefully recoup down the road, and knowing that if you're feeling negative right now, it will not last forever. And so what's the secret is planning ahead of time, recognizing your reaction for what it is, any nervousness you have, any fear, and then talk with an accountability partner. Share how you're feeling and ask them for advice so you can stick to your strategy and life plan. And so the average person who has an advisor, they have the potential increase of 3% in returns just by having an accountability partner. And so that's where we, as my father and I, come in to help be your accountability partner in your life plan. And so if you want to learn more about different finance topics, I wanted to share that I have a podcast for Gen Z and millennials to help them work toward financial freedom. And check back in the future as we're going to be inviting Elisabeth to be on that podcast. So if you like what she's sharing, please check it out in a few months. But with that, if anyone has questions, please feel free to email them and we'll answer them as soon as we can. And we just wanted to say thank you very much for all of your time and for listening. Elisabeth, do you want to end the webinar on a thank you note?
I sure do. And I just want to address one excellent point that you made about, the things that we can control and the things that we can't control. Obviously, we can't control if we get sick. We can't control whether or not when we die or we're going to die. Like death and taxes, it's going to happen. And so I think that even for me at times, we get so caught up in the fear around what we can't control. Let us all focus on the things that we can control, and the fear just automatically subsides. And so I love that point, and I just wanted to piggyback on that. So if you have any questions for either one of us, we'd be delighted to answer. You see the emails here on the screen. We will respond as soon as possible. We cannot thank you enough for taking the time out of your very busy life to listen to a couple of gals who really love what they do, and we really believe in what we do. And I think that we both feel that we get to do this work. It's not like we get up every day and we have to slog through the 9 to 5. We get the privilege of working with people like you and creating long-lasting financial health, wealth, and legacies. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.